In Colorado's high country, where thin air meets infinite sky, some mysteries defy both science and explanation. On the night of December 13, 2023, Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at Pine Ridge Observatory with the anticipation of someone who had waited all year for this moment. The Geminid meteor shower was reaching its peak, and conditions were perfect. Clear skies stretched endlessly above the Colorado Rockies, with no moon to interfere with the celestial display. Elena had driven 3 hours from her home in Boulder, her Honda Civic packed with specialized equipment that supplemented the observatory's standard instruments. Security cameras captured her arrival at 8:47 p.m., methodically unloading cases of photographic gear and what appeared to be modified tracking equipment. She moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. The Pine Ridge Observatory sits at 9,200 feet elevation, perched on a granite outcrop that offers unobstructed views in every direction. Built in 1987 as a joint venture between the University of Colorado and the National Science Foundation, it houses 3 major telescopes and serves as a research station for atmospheric and astronomical studies. On clear nights like this one, it becomes a window to the universe. Elena had been coming here for 5 years, always during significant celestial events. Observatory coordinator Dr. Michael Chen knew her well and had reserved the secondary observation deck for her exclusive use during the meteor shower's peak hours. She was incredibly thorough, Dr. Chen would later tell investigators. Elena always arrived early and stayed late. She took more detailed notes than most graduate students. The security footage shows Elena setting up her equipment with methodical precision. She aligned 3 cameras on tripods, each pointed at different sections of the sky. Her laptop displayed star charts and timing calculations. Most notably, she had brought what appeared to be a modified radio telescope dish, no larger than a satellite TV receiver, which she connected to a series of electronic devices. At 11:47 p.m., Elena made her scheduled radio check-in with Dr. Chen, who was monitoring from the main observatory building a quarter-mile away. Her voice was calm and professional as she reported optimal conditions and confirmed that the meteor activity was increasing as predicted. "Scene is exceptional tonight," she said. "No atmospheric interference. I'm getting some interesting readings on the radio equipment." That would be the last time anyone heard from Elena Vasquez. When Dr. Chen arrived at dawn to begin the morning equipment check, he found Elena's observation station exactly as she had arranged it, with one crucial difference. Elena was gone. Her chair sat empty beside the still-running telescope, which had been tracking something across the sky throughout the night. Her coffee cup remained half full on the equipment table, still warm enough to suggest she had been there recently. All of Elena's expensive equipment remained untouched. Her cameras had continued photographing the sky on their automatic timers. Her laptop was still powered on, displaying data files that had been updating throughout the night. Most puzzling of all, her car keys and purse were exactly where she had left them. It made no sense, Dr. Chen later explained to the Pine Ridge County Sheriff's Department. Elena would never abandon that equipment. Some of those instruments were worth more than most people's cars. And she certainly wouldn't leave during the best part of the meteor shower. That's what she came for. The observation deck itself showed no signs of disturbance. The wooden platform, built as an extension over the rocky cliff face, remained solid and secure. The safety railings were intact. Elena's notebooks lay open to her last entries, made just after midnight according to the timestamps. Her handwriting was steady and clear, recording meteor frequencies and trajectories with scientific precision. But Elena Vasquez was nowhere to be found. Deputy Sarah Chen of the Pine Ridge County Sheriff's Office was the first law enforcement officer on scene. She arrived at 7:23 a.m., called by a worried doctor. Chen, who had waited nearly an hour hoping Elena might return from a walk or bathroom break. "My first thought was medical emergency," Deputy Chen would later report. Maybe she had fallen and was injured somewhere nearby. But there was no blood, no signs of struggle, no indication of where she might have gone. The mystery deepened when investigators reviewed the security camera footage. The cameras had captured Elena's methodical setup in the early hours of her observation session. But at 12:15 a.m., just 28 minutes after her final radio contact, all cameras in the vicinity of Elena's position had simultaneously malfunctioned. The feeds showed nothing but static until 2:30 a.m., when normal recording resumed. By that time, Elena's chair was already empty. Mountain Rescue Coordinator Jake Morrison received the call at 8:15 a.m. on December 14th. With 23 years of experience in the Colorado Rockies, Morrison had coordinated searches for missing hikers, fallen climbers, and lost hunters. But a missing astronomer presented unique challenges. The observatory site is extremely remote, Morrison explained to the assembled search teams that morning. We're dealing with elevation, exposure to elements, and terrain that can be deadly even to experienced outdoors people. Dr. Vasquez was not known to be a hiker or climber. If she wandered away from the platform in the dark, she could be anywhere. The terrain surrounding Pine Ridge Observatory is unforgiving. Steep granite slopes drop away from the observation platform into dense forests of Engelmann spruce and lodgepole pine. Below the tree line, the ground is littered with deadfall and hidden crevices between massive boulders. Wildlife trails wind through the undergrowth, but they lead to dead ends or dangerous cliff faces as often as they connect to anything useful. Morrison organized 3 search teams to cover different sectors. Team 1 would search the immediate area around the observatory, expanding outward in concentric circles. Team 2 would follow the access road and check for any signs that Elena might have attempted to walk out on foot. Team 3, led by Morrison himself, would focus on the tree line and rocky areas below the platform where someone might fall and become trapped. The search dogs arrived at 10:30 a.m., handled by Colorado search and rescue specialist Maria Santos. Santos had worked with her German Shepherd, Rex, on over 200 missing person cases throughout the state. Rex is exceptional at scent tracking, Santos told the team. Even with the time that's passed, we should be able to pick up a trail. Rex immediately identified Elena's scent from her equipment and personal items. The dog worked methodically around the observation platform, nose to the ground, occasionally lifting his head to test the air currents. For the first 30 minutes, everything proceeded normally. Rex followed Elena's movements from her car to the platform, traced her path as she set up equipment, and confirmed her presence at various locations throughout the setup process. But when Rex reached the edge of the observation platform, something changed. The dog stopped abruptly at the safety railing and refused to continue. Despite Santos's commands and encouragement, Rex backed away from the platform's edge and whined, a behavior Santos had never observed in their years working together. I've seen dogs lose scent trails before, Santos later reported. Weather, water, contamination from other people or animals. There are many reasons a trail can go cold. But I've never seen Rex refuse to work. It was like he was afraid of something. While the dog team struggled with the cold trail, investigators made other discoveries that deepened the mystery. Elena's Honda Civic was found locked and secure in the observatory parking area. Her keys remained on the equipment table exactly where the security cameras had recorded her placing them. Inside the vehicle, investigators found Elena's purse containing her driver's license, credit cards, and $247 in cash. Her cell phone was also in the car, powered off, which explained why attempts to call her had gone straight to voicemail. There was absolutely no indication that Dr. Vasquez had planned to leave the site, reported Deputy Chen. Her car was locked, her personal items were secured, and according to Dr. Chen, she had made arrangements to stay through dawn to photograph the end of the meteor shower. Everything suggested she intended to be there for several more hours. The security camera malfunction presented another puzzle. The observatory's digital surveillance system was state-of-the-art, installed just 2 years earlier as part of a security upgrade funded by federal research grants. The cameras were designed to operate in extreme weather conditions and had backup power systems to prevent outages during mountain storms. I've been maintaining these systems since installation, explained observatory technician David Park. We've never had a simultaneous failure of multiple cameras. The system is designed with redundancy specifically to prevent that kind of total coverage loss. For all 3 cameras covering the secondary observation deck to fail at the exact same time, the odds are astronomical. Park's technical analysis revealed that the cameras had not actually failed. Instead, they had somehow been disabled remotely, though the method remained unclear. The cameras resumed normal function at exactly 2:30 a.m., as if controlled by a timer. No technical explanation could account for this pattern. As the first day of searching concluded without finding any trace of Elena Vasquez, investigators expanded their inquiry beyond the immediate search area. They began contacting Elena's colleagues, family members, and friends to construct a timeline of her activities in the days before her disappearance. Elena's sister, Carmen Vasquez, drove up from Denver that evening. Elena was passionate about astronomy, Carmen told investigators. She had been planning this observation for months. She would never just leave. Something happened to her up there, and we need to find out what. The search would continue into its second day, but already a troubling pattern was emerging. Elena Vasquez had vanished without a trace from a location with limited access, sophisticated security systems, and no apparent route of escape. The missing 2 hours and 15 minutes of camera coverage suggested something had been deliberately concealed. As the December wind howled across the granite peaks that night, the observatory's telescopes continued their automated tracking programs, scanning the same sections of sky that Elena had been monitoring when she disappeared. Dr. Elena Vasquez was not your typical amateur astronomer. With a PhD in astrophysics from the University of Colorado and 12 years of experience at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, she possessed professional-level expertise in celestial observation and data analysis. Her colleagues described her as brilliant, but increasingly obsessive about what she termed anomalous celestial events. Elena had always been interested in unexplained phenomena, said Dr. Robert Martinez, her former supervisor at NCAR. But over the past year, it had become more than just scientific curiosity. She was convinced there were patterns in the data that mainstream astronomy was overlooking or actively ignoring. Elena's work history painted a picture of someone whose career had taken an unusual turn. Until 2019, she had published peer-reviewed research on atmospheric disturbances and their effects on astronomical observation. Her work was respected, if not groundbreaking, but her recent publications had veered into territory that made her colleagues uncomfortable. Papers about unidentified aerial phenomena, unexplained radio signals, and what she called non-ballistic trajectory anomalies. The investigation into Elena's disappearance took a significant turn when investigators gained access to her laptop computer, which had been left running on the observation platform. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about her disappearance. The laptop contained terabytes of encrypted data files, many of which had been created and modified during the hours when Elena was supposedly missing. The timestamps showed continuous activity from 12:15 a.m. through 3:45 a.m. on December 14th, well past the time when the security cameras had resumed function and revealed an empty observation platform. The computer evidence was impossible to reconcile with the physical evidence, said Colorado State Police digital forensics specialist Lisa Park-Kaya. Either Dr. Vasquez was operating her equipment for hours after she vanished, or someone else was using her computer with her passwords and security protocols. Neither explanation made sense. The encrypted files required specialized software to decode, but when state investigators finally cracked Elena's security, they discovered something extraordinary. The files contained detailed logs of telescope observations focused on coordinates that corresponded to no known celestial objects. Elena had been tracking something that, according to her calculations, was moving in patterns that defied conventional understanding of orbital mechanics. Elena's observation logs, dating back 6 months, documented objects that appeared to accelerate and decelerate without visible means of propulsion. Her measurements showed trajectory changes that required impossible amounts of energy for any known technology. Most puzzling of all, these objects seemed to respond to her observations, altering their behavior when her equipment was pointed in their direction. Dr. Vasquez had developed sophisticated tracking algorithms, explained Dr. Martinez, who was called in to help interpret the data. Her mathematics were sound. Her methodology was rigorous. But the phenomena she was documenting challenged basic principles of physics. Objects don't just change direction in space without some form of propulsion or gravitational influence. No. Deeper analysis of Elena's files revealed references to something called Project Meridian. This appeared to be Elena's private name for her investigation into these anomalous objects. The project files contained correspondence with other researchers around the world, people who claimed to be documenting similar phenomena from different observation points. One email thread, dating from just 2 weeks before Elena's disappearance, showed her coordinating with contacts in Chile, Australia, and Hawaii to conduct simultaneous observations of specific coordinates. "We need triangulation data to confirm what I'm seeing here," she had written. "If these objects are real, they represent technology beyond our current understanding. If they're not real, then we're dealing with a systematic failure of multiple observation systems, which is almost as significant." The observatory's own equipment logs provided another piece of the puzzle. The main telescope, which Elena had been using in conjunction with her personal equipment, showed records of manual adjustments throughout the night of her disappearance. Someone had repeatedly redirected the telescope's position, tracking objects across different sectors of the sky in a pattern that matched Elena's Project Meridian protocols. "The telescope movements were too precise to be random," observed observatory technician David Park. "Someone with detailed knowledge of the equipment and specific coordinates was operating that system throughout the night. The question is who and how, since we have no record of anyone being on the platform after 12:15 a.m. Perhaps most disturbing of all was Elena's personal research journal, found in a locked filing cabinet at her Boulder apartment. The handwritten entries from the weeks before her disappearance showed a woman increasingly convinced that she was being watched and that her research was being monitored by unknown parties. November 28th. Noticed the same vehicle parked outside the coffee shop 3 days in a row. Coincidence? December 2nd. Someone accessed my university office computer overnight. Files were copied but not deleted. They want me to know they were there. December 8th. Phone calls with no one on the line. Traditional surveillance or something more sophisticated? December 12th. Tomorrow is the Geminid Peak. If they're going to make contact, it will be then. I've prepared protocols for 3 scenarios: peaceful contact, hostile contact, and extraction. The data must survive even if I don't attain. Investigators found evidence that Elena had been taking unusual precautions in the weeks before her disappearance. She had purchased encrypted communication devices, installed additional security software on her computers, and made several large cash withdrawals from her bank accounts. She had also rented a storage unit under a false name, though investigators had not yet located it. The picture that emerged was of a respected scientist who believed she had made a discovery of profound significance and was terrified of the consequences. Whether Elena's fears were justified or the product of increasing paranoia remained unclear. But the sophisticated nature of her preparations suggested someone who was methodically planning for multiple contingencies. As investigators continued analyzing Elena's research data, one thing became certain. Her disappearance was not a random event. It was connected to whatever she had been observing in the night sky above Colorado. In the days following Elena's disappearance, Sheriff Morrison's investigation expanded beyond the physical search to include interviews with Pine Ridge's tight-knit community. What emerged was a portrait of a brilliant scientist who had become increasingly agitated in the weeks leading up to December 13th. Martha Chen, who ran the Pine Ridge General Store, remembered Elena's visits becoming more frequent in late November. She'd come in and asking about batteries, flashlights, things you wouldn't normally associate with someone who worked at an observatory, Chen told investigators. She seemed nervous, kept looking over her shoulder. When I asked if everything was okay, She just said she was working on something important. At the Copper Kettle Cafe, owner Jim Bradley recalled Elena making unusual requests in early December. She wanted to know about the old mining roads up past Whiteface Peak, Bradley said. Asked if anyone still used them, if there were any cabins or structures up there. I told her most of those roads hadn't been maintained in 30 years, but she seemed real interested anyway. The most revealing conversation came from Sarah Whitehorse, the cultural liaison between the University Research Station and the Northern Arapaho Nation. Whitehorse had known Elena for 3 years and considered her a respectful colleague who understood the sensitivity of conducting research on traditional lands. About 2 weeks before she disappeared, Elena came to me with questions about our stories. Whitehorse explained during her interview with Sheriff Morrison. She wanted to know about the Star Watchers, the ones our grandparents warned us about. I told her what I could share, but I also gave her a warning. There are reasons our people have always been careful about watching the sky too closely, especially from certain places. When pressed for details, Whitehorse described traditional stories about individuals who became obsessed with celestial phenomena and eventually vanished. Elena laughed it off at first, but then she got very serious. She asked if I thought someone could be watching the Watchers. I didn't know what to tell her. The investigation also uncovered Elena's increasingly erratic behavior at the observatory itself. Dr. Michael Chen, the facility coordinator, admitted that he had been concerned about Elena's after-hours activities. She had legitimate research access, but she was requesting time on equipment that wasn't related to her approved projects. Dr. Chen told deputies. When I asked her about it, she said she was following up on some anomalous data. She showed me printouts, but I couldn't make sense of what she was tracking. Dr. Chen also revealed that Elena had been in contact with researchers at other facilities across the western United States. She was asking about their observation schedules, whether they'd noticed anything unusual in specific coordinate ranges. It seemed like she was trying to coordinate some kind of multi-site observation project, but she wasn't going through official channels. Oh, no. I don't worry, Doctor. Perhaps most troubling were the reports from several Pine Ridge residents who claimed to have seen unusual activity around the observatory in the nights before Elena's disappearance. Ranch hand Pete Kowalski, whose property bordered the research station, reported seeing additional vehicles parked near the observatory after normal operating hours. I thought maybe they were having some kind of special event, Kowalski said. But when I mentioned it to Dr. Chen at the post office, he didn't know anything about it. Said as far as he knew, only Elena was scheduled for observation time those nights. Me? Even more puzzling were reports of lights seen moving through the forest near the observatory. Multiple witnesses, including seasonal resort worker Lisa Dunn, described seeing flashlight beams or vehicle headlights in areas where no roads existed. It was around 10 p.m. on December 11th, Dunn recalled. I was closing up the visitor center when I saw lights moving through the trees on the north slope. They were too high up to be on any road I knew about, and they were moving in a pattern that didn't make sense, like someone was searching for something. When investigators asked Dunn to elaborate, she described the lights as appearing to move systematically, as if conducting a grid search of the forest. It went on for maybe 20 minutes, then just stopped. I figured it was probably search and rescue training or something, but now I wonder. Local postal worker Frank Martinez added another piece to the puzzle when he mentioned Elena's recent shipping habits. She'd been getting packages almost daily for the past month, Martinez told investigators. Electronic equipment, camping gear, stuff that seemed unusual for someone who worked indoors. She always seemed anxious to get them, like she was expecting something specific. The pattern that emerged from these community interviews suggested Elena had been preparing for something significant in the weeks before her disappearance. Her purchases, her questions about remote locations, and her increasingly nervous behavior all pointed to someone who felt threatened or was planning for an uncertain future. But Perhaps the most unsettling detail came from Pine Ridge's volunteer fire chief, Robert Yazzie, who mentioned seeing Elena at unusual hours. "I'd see her driving through town at 2 or 3 a.m. sometimes," Yazzie said. "Not heading to the observatory, but coming from the opposite direction, like she'd been up in the backcountry. When you see the same person doing that multiple times, you start to wonder what they're up to." As Sheriff Morrison compiled these statements, a picture emerged of Elena Vasquez as a researcher who had stumbled onto something that frightened her. Her requests for information about remote locations, her nervous behavior, and her questions about traditional warnings all suggested someone preparing for a threat she couldn't fully articulate. But whether that threat was real or imagined remained unclear. And with Elena gone, the truth behind her final weeks seemed as distant as the stars she had spent her life studying. The breakthrough in understanding Elena's disappearance came 3 weeks later, when computer forensics specialist Dr. Amanda Walsh finally cracked the encryption on Elena's research files. What she found painted a picture of a scientist ascending into either brilliant discovery or a dangerous obsession. The encrypted files contained months of observational data that Elena had been collecting without official sanction. Unlike typical astronomical research, these observations focused on objects exhibiting what Elena termed non-ballistic movement patterns. The technical language was precise, but the implications were staggering. "She was tracking objects that appeared to be under intelligent control, Doctor," Walsh explained to Sheriff Morrison during her briefing on January 8, 2024. "The trajectory calculations show movement that violates known physics for natural celestial phenomena. These objects would accelerate, decelerate, and change direction in ways that no asteroid, comet, or space debris could manage." Elena's notes, written in a mixture of scientific notation and increasingly agitated personal observations, revealed the evolution of her investigation. The earliest entries, dating back to September, were clinical and detached. By November, her tone had shifted dramatically. One entry, dated November 28, read, "Third confirmation of pattern Delta 7. Objects maintaining formation while executing coordinated directional changes. Probability of natural phenomenon. Approaching 0.I. Someone needs to document this. Someone needs to prepare." Nierzy. Why? Deogi? The files also contained email exchanges with researchers at observatories in New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Elena had been reaching out to colleagues under the pretense of routine data sharing, but her real purpose was to verify her observations. The responses she received were mixed. Some dismissed her data as equipment malfunctions, while others admitted to seeing similar anomalies but expressed reluctance to investigate further. Dr. Patricia Liang from the Palomar Observatory had written, "Elena, I've seen the patterns you're describing, but pursuing this kind of research is career suicide. There are people who don't want these questions asked. Be careful." A more ominous exchange came from Dr. Robert Chen at the Very Large Array in New Mexico. His final message to Elena, sent December 10th, simply read, "Stop looking. They know you're looking. Get out now. Neo. Pabios." The investigation into Elena's financial records, conducted by Detective Sarah Kim from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, revealed additional concerning patterns. Starting in October, Elena had made a series of large cash withdrawals totaling over $8,000. Bank security footage showed her making these transactions at different branches across 3 counties, behavior consistent with someone trying to avoid detection. Credit card records showed purchases of surveillance equipment, encrypted communication devices, and camping gear. Most telling was her purchase of a high-powered radio scanner capable of monitoring federal agency frequencies. Elena had been preparing for something, and she clearly didn't trust normal communication channels. The physical search of Elena's apartment, conducted with a warrant on January 15th, yielded the most significant discovery yet. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her bedroom closet, investigators found a waterproof container holding backup hard drives, handwritten coordinates, and detailed maps of remote locations throughout Colorado's backcountry. The coordinates corresponded to locations far from any official research facility or populated area. When Sheriff Morrison's team visited several of these sites, they found evidence of recent human activity, tire tracks, footprints, and what appeared to be improvised observation posts constructed from natural materials. At one location, a remote clearing near Rabbit Ears Pass, deputies discovered a carefully concealed cache containing additional equipment, night vision scopes, portable weather monitoring devices, and notebooks filled with Alana's handwriting. The final entry, dated December 12th, was especially troubling. Confirmation received from 3 sources. They know about the documentation. Extraction protocols may be necessary. If something happens to me, the evidence is secured at coordinates 39.9526 degree, 106.0673 degree W. The pattern is real. The implications are beyond current scientific paradigm. Someone must continue the work. Nobody. I just see. The coordinates led to another remote location that search teams had not yet investigated. When they arrived at the site the following day, they found another hidden cache, this one containing what appeared to be Elena's most sensitive research data. The files detailed not just the movement patterns of unidentified objects, but also documented what Elena believed was a systematic effort to suppress similar research at institutions across the country. She had compiled a list of researchers who had reported similar phenomena, cross-referenced with career disruptions, funding cuts, and in several cases, mysterious disappearances. The pattern she described suggested an organized effort to prevent this type of investigation from gaining official recognition. One document, titled Suppression Protocol Analysis, outlined Elena's theory that federal agencies were actively monitoring astronomical research for specific types of discoveries. She believed her work had attracted unwanted attention and that her communications were being intercepted. Dr. Chen, when shown Elena's hidden research, admitted that he had noticed unusual activity around the observatory's computer networks in recent weeks. We had some security anomalies, attempts to access systems that contained Elena's observation data. I assumed it was routine hacking attempts, but now I wonder if someone was specifically targeting her work. No. Timnut? Tosene. The revelation of Elena's secret research transformed the investigation from a simple missing person case into something far more complex. Either Elena had stumbled onto a genuine phenomenon that powerful interests wanted suppressed, or her brilliant mind had constructed an elaborate delusion that ultimately consumed her. What remained clear was that in her final weeks, Elena Vasquez had been living in fear, preparing for an outcome she considered inevitable. Whether that outcome was discovery, suppression, or something else entirely, only Elena knew for certain. As the investigation into Elena's disappearance entered February 2024, Sheriff Morrison faced a puzzling collection of witness accounts that seemed to contradict each other at every turn. The night of December 13th had been cloudy with intermittent snow, limiting visibility, but several Pine Ridge residents reported seeing activity that didn't align with the official timeline. The most compelling witness was Tom Brennan, a ranch hand who worked the late shift at the Lazy K Ranch, located approximately 2 miles southeast of the observatory. Brennan had been checking on cattle in the early morning hours when he spotted a figure walking purposefully toward the tree line. It was around 2 a.m., maybe a little after. Brennan told Deputy Chen during his interview, "I saw someone with a flashlight moving through the meadow below the observatory. They weren't walking like they were lost or searching for something. They knew exactly where they were going. Out. North." When asked to describe the figure, Brennan's account became more uncertain. Average height, wearing dark clothing. Could have been a man or woman. Hard to tell at that distance. But what struck me was how they moved. Quick. Deliberate. Like they were trying not to be seen. Brennan's testimony took on additional significance when investigators realized that 2 a.m. fell within the window, when the observatory's security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned. If someone had been moving through the area at that time, there would be no electronic record of their presence. A second witness account came from Maria Santos, a night shift worker at the Pine Ridge Medical Clinic who had been driving home around 2:15 a.m. Santos claimed she saw Elena's distinctive blue Honda Civic leaving the Observatory access road and heading toward town. "I recognized the car because Dr. Vasquez had been in the clinic a few weeks earlier for a routine checkup," Santos explained. "The headlights caught my attention because you don't usually see traffic on that road so late. I remember thinking it was odd that someone was leaving the observatory during what was supposed to be the best night for meteor watching." Santos's account presented a significant problem for investigators. If Elena had left the observatory voluntarily around 2:15 a.m., it would explain why no trace of her was found in the immediate area. But it raised new questions about where she had gone and why she had abandoned her expensive equipment. The mystery deepened when maintenance logs revealed that Elena's keycard had been used to access restricted areas of the observatory complex after the supposed time of her departure. The electronic records showed badge swipes at 2:47 a.m. and 3:23 a.m., nearly an hour after Santos claimed to see Elena's car leaving the facility. Either Dr. Vasquez returned to the observatory after initially leaving, or someone else was using her access card, Detective Kim explained to Sheriff Morrison. The restricted areas that were accessed included the equipment storage rooms and the radio communications center. Someone was looking for something specific. Security footage from the communications center, which operated on a separate system that hadn't malfunctioned, showed a figure in dark clothing moving through the facility. The image quality was poor due to low lighting, but the person appeared to know their way around the complex, accessing specific equipment without hesitation. A third witness account came from an unexpected source. Jake Morales, a long-haul trucker who had pulled over at a scenic overlook to rest, reported seeing unusual activity at the observatory around 3:30 a.m. From his vantage point on Highway 34, Morales had a clear view of the research facility. "I was having coffee and checking my logbook when I noticed lights moving around up there," Morales told investigators. "Not just one or two lights, but maybe 4 or 5, moving in formation across the observatory grounds. At first I thought it might be security guards, but the pattern was too organized, too purposeful." Morales described the lights as moving systematically from building to building, spending several minutes at each location before proceeding to the next. It looked like they were conducting some kind of search or inspection. The whole thing lasted maybe 20 minutes. Then all the lights disappeared at once. When investigators asked Morales why he hadn't reported this activity immediately, he explained that he assumed it was official business. "I figured it was federal agents or something. You hear stories about government facilities, and I didn't want to get involved in something that wasn't my business." The conflicting witness accounts painted a picture of significant activity on the night Elena disappeared, but none of the testimonies could be definitively corroborated. Physical evidence from the scene was limited due to snow that had fallen intermittently throughout the night, obscuring potential tracks or forensic traces. Further complicating matters was the discovery of Elena's hidden research cache, which included detailed extraction protocols and references to safe houses and remote locations throughout the Rocky Mountain region. The documents suggested that Elena had developed contingency plans for disappearing voluntarily if she felt threatened. One particularly intriguing document, found in Elena's handwriting, outlined specific procedures for abandoning her research station, while making it appear as though she had vanished involuntarily. The plan included methods for disabling security cameras, staging personal belongings to suggest a struggle, and creating false electronic trails to confuse investigators. She had clearly thought this through, Sheriff Morrison admitted during a press briefing in March. The question is whether she implemented these plans herself, or whether someone else forced her to disappear using her own methods against her. The investigation had reached an impasse. Multiple witnesses had seen activity consistent with Elena either leaving voluntarily or being taken against her will. The physical evidence could support either theory, and Elena's own research into extraction protocols suggested she was prepared for both possibilities. As winter gave way to spring in Pine Ridge County, the truth behind Elena Vasquez's disappearance remained as elusive as the celestial phenomena she had spent her final weeks documenting. 4 years have passed since Elena Vasquez vanished from the Pine Ridge Observatory, and the case remains officially open with the Pine Ridge County Sheriff's Department. Despite extensive investigation, multiple theories, and hundreds of volunteer hours spent searching Colorado's wilderness areas, no definitive answer has emerged about what happened on that December night in 2023. Sheriff Morrison, who retired in late 2025, passed the case to his successor along with a thick file of evidence and a simple assessment. This is either the most elaborate disappearance in county history, or we're dealing with something beyond our usual experience. No. The official investigation developed several working theories, each supported by some evidence but contradicted by others. The voluntary disappearance theory gained credibility with the discovery of Elena's extraction protocols and hidden research caches. Dr. Patricia Hayes, a forensic psychologist consulted on the case, noted that Elena's behavior in her final weeks was consistent with someone planning to disappear. She exhibited classic patterns of preparation for voluntary disappearance, Dr. Hayes explained in her consultation report. The cash withdrawals, equipment purchases, and establishment of remote supply caches all suggest deliberate planning. Her research into suppression protocols may have convinced her that disappearing was her only option for survival. This theory gained further support when investigators discovered that Elena had been in contact with an underground network of researchers claiming to investigate suppressed scientific phenomena. Digital forensics revealed encrypted communications with individuals using code names and sophisticated operational security measures. One particularly significant contact was someone identified only as Meridian 7, who had provided Elena with detailed instructions for avoiding detection by what they termed suppression assets. The final message from this contact, sent on December 11th, read, "Package compromised. Implement Protocol 7 immediately. Trust no official channels." No. However, the voluntary disappearance theory struggled to explain several key pieces of evidence. Elena's family remained adamant that she would never abandon her life's work voluntarily. Her sister Carmen, a clinical psychologist from Denver, argued that Elena's mental state, while stressed, showed no signs of the despair typically associated with voluntary disappearance. Elena was excited about her research, not defeated by it, Carmen told investigators. She believed she was on the verge of a breakthrough that would revolutionize astronomy. She wouldn't run away from the most important discovery of her career. The abduction theory, while less supported by physical evidence, couldn't be dismissed entirely. The witness accounts of coordinated activity at the observatory, the systematic search patterns observed by truck driver Jake Morales, and the sophisticated manipulation of security systems suggested involvement by individuals with advanced training and equipment. Dr. Michael Chen, who continued as observatory coordinator, implemented new security protocols following Elena's disappearance. "We've upgraded our system significantly, Dr. Chen explained. But whoever was responsible for the security breach that night demonstrated capabilities that concern federal authorities. This wasn't the work of casual intruders." The most disturbing development came in 2026, when radio operators across the western United States began detecting encrypted transmissions that matched the frequency patterns Elena had documented in her research. The signals appeared to originate from remote locations and followed the same mathematical sequences Elena had identified in her analysis of suppression protocols. Dr. Amanda Walsh, the computer forensics specialist who had decrypted Elena's files, was brought in to analyze the new transmissions. The encryption methodology is identical to what Dr. Vasquez was using in her final weeks, Walsh reported. Either someone has access to her work, or she's still alive and continuing her research from an undisclosed location. No. The transmissions were detected from various locations across Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming, always from areas with minimal population and no registered research facilities. Attempts to triangulate the exact source locations led search teams to remote wilderness areas where they occasionally found evidence of temporary human presence, fire rings, equipment caches, and improvised observation platforms. In the summer of 2026, hikers in the San Juan Mountains discovered a remote camp that contained equipment matching items from Elena's missing inventory list. The camp had been abandoned recently, with personal effects that included notebooks written in Elena's distinctive handwriting. However, by the time investigators reached the location, any occupants had vanished, leaving behind only tantalizing clues. The notebooks contained updated observations of the celestial phenomena Elena had been tracking, with entries dated months after her official disappearance. The most recent entry, dated just weeks before the camp's discovery, read, "Pattern evolution confirmed. Suppression protocols, adapting to countermeasures. Research must continue from distributed locations. The truth is more significant than personal safety." Dr. Chen and the remaining observatory staff made the decision to continue Elena's official research project, hoping to shed light on the phenomena that had consumed her final weeks. Using her original observation protocols, they conducted systematic monitoring of the coordinates Elena had been tracking. "We've observed some unusual celestial activity, Doctor," Chen admitted during a 2027 interview with Astronomy Today magazine. "Nothing that matches the dramatic patterns Elena documented, but enough to suggest she was onto something scientifically significant. Whether that discovery led to her disappearance remains an open question." The Pine Ridge community has largely moved on from the intense scrutiny that followed Elena's disappearance. But her case continues to attract attention from researchers, conspiracy theorists, and true crime enthusiasts. The observatory has become an unofficial pilgrimage site for individuals claiming to investigate government cover-ups of astronomical phenomena. Sarah Whitehorse, the cultural liaison who had warned Elena about the dangers of watching the sky too closely, reflected on the case's lasting impact during a 2027 tribal council meeting. "Our grandparents' stories exist for good reasons," Whitehorse observed. "Some knowledge comes with a price, and some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved." Today, the Pine Ridge Observatory continues its research under enhanced security protocols. Elena's telescope remains operational, automatically tracking the coordinates she had programmed into its system during her final night. On clear evenings, when the Geminid meteors streak across the Colorado sky, observers sometimes wonder if Elena Vasquez is still out there somewhere, watching the stars and documenting phenomena that the rest of the world isn't ready to acknowledge. The case file remains open. The radio transmissions continue sporadically, and the question that drove Elena's final weeks remains unanswered. What happens when someone discovers something that others believe should stay hidden? Perhaps, in Elena's own words from her final research notes, some truths are worth any sacrifice to preserve.